Hello, it's Maggie, the Cheshire Crafter here. It's my sister-in-law's birthday next week and I wanted to make a throw size quilt for her. I wanted to use my fabric stash from behind me and I've come up with an idea for a pattern and I've called it the Shabby Chic Rose Garden Trellis quilt. I haven't seen a trellis created in this way before, so I'm experimenting. So this is my pattern. Please feel free to copy it, won't you? For the flowers on this quilt, I'm taking all the fabrics from my recycled fabrics from my stash. So these have all previously been clothing, whether they be shirts, ladies' dresses, blouses. There'll be a variety here. And you can see I'm taking the turquoise blues into candy pinks and dusky pinks range. Now I've got a variety of plains, stripes, polka dots, florals and ginghams. And I've got a variety of textures from crushed velvet to cotton, linen, again cotton, embroidery on gley. I can't think what the word is for that at the moment. I'll come back. Seersucker cotton and cottons. And they need to also blend in with the background. So I placed my bias bindings next to them and was happy with that because I wanted a mixture of lights, mediums and darks. Fabric stash is made up of clothing that I've recycled from charity shops. If you haven't seen any of my videos, go back and watch some of those. Here's some of the items that I used in this quilt. This is what they formerly looked like. For my leaves, I'm going to use these bright greens, almost a citrine green, one with a little bit of blue in and a check, and through to a linen. I've got a limited amount of that, but it is an olive green. And again, I'll show you those in grayscale. Now I'm going to cut those out in varying sizes using templates, and I'm going to show you what I've used for my templates. From a kitchen cupboard, I've taken a variety of things that are circumference I can use for a template in sizes. This varies from a 7-inch plate down in small decreasing sizes to a 2-inch, and that was a 2-inch diameter. I just used the back of a cereal packet, marked round it with a pen, and I'm going to cut them with scissors. Now for the leaf shape, I'm going to use a Christmas bauble previous cutout. I'm going to take that shape and make a template around it for my leaf shape. For fabric for my front and back, I'm going to recycle this duvet cover, and this is 100% cotton. I bought this new, it had been donated to a charity shop. I managed to buy the duvet cover, king size quilt and pillowcases all for £25. So this duvet cover cost £15 and it measures 90 by 90. Now there's two pieces here. I've left the two pieces connected, but I'm only going to cut the top piece. My final quilt will measure 56 by 72, but don't forget that you need to leave allowances for the seams. So from this quilt that I've now ironed, I'm going to cut from the top sheet 63 8.5-inch blocks. I've made 65 flowers of varying sizes, starting from the 7-inch, which actually have 6 pieces of fabric. And don't forget that there'll be quite a bit of weight in that fabric, so they're going to go nearer the bottom. And as we go up, we go to 5 pieces of fabric and then 4 pieces of fabric to almost bud size at the top. Now they're all different, and I've tried to vary the pink and the blue between them. When we go and have a look at the pattern, you will see that the rose trellis will have bigger roses at the bottom and then get lighter as it gets to the top. I want to show how you can recycle and use quite small pieces of fabric. You can see how big I've got a square here. This was the placket from a shirt, and this was the edge that had the buttonholes in. I cut the buttonholes off and then opened the fabric out and ironed it. You'd be surprised how much you can get from that placket when you unpick it. If you pause to view the pattern, you'll see it clearer. But it's going to measure 56 by 72, and in order to do that, my 8.5-inch squares are going to finish at 8 inches. So across the top there'll be 7 by 9, and I'm going to put the larger roses at the bottom and then lighten it up as we go up the quilt, and I'm going to be quite random doing that. On the pattern, I've shown that you don't have to put a rose in every square. My trellis is going to be made from bias binding, and I've done it this way so that it'll be easier for me to quilt it. I'm at my heavy-duty Singer sewing machine to sew them. I'm first going to sew the roses onto the 8-inch squares, and to do that, I'm using my walking foot because I'm going to be going through a lot of thicknesses here. I've got the same thread in the top and bottom, and this is a Silco thread. I call it Dusky Rose, and it's a 50 weight. My tension is on 4. My needle position is to the right, and I'm using, my stitch length is on 2, and I'm doing a straight stitch. I'm finding the approximate centre of the square, and I'm choosing some leaves to go with this smaller rose first. I'm going to start by sewing the outer edge, and I'm going to make sure that these leaves are caught in under that seam. I'm going to sew about 1/2 inch away from the edge on each petal. I'll start and finish with the back stitch. Go slowly and start with your largest petal first. Make sure that the leaves are connected underneath, and I'll secure those with a green thread later. Now I'm going to do concentric circles, adding my next piece of fabric on. That will help hide those previous stitches. Start with some of the smaller flowers first, just to make sure that you get your skills right. And the fabric will curl up. You're intending it to do that. This is raw edge applique. At the top of the quilt, I'm going to do 2 squares that have 2 small sizes in it, and alternate where I put the leaves. I want to leave about 1 inch border around this. Making sure that when adding my broidery on glaze that it's the right side up. Sometimes the fabric looks very similar on the reverse. Trim your threads as close as you can to the reverse stitching on the front and on the back. Here I've added 2 circles the same size, and I'm just doing that to give myself a little bit of density. When this fluffs up, once it's washed, that extra layer will start to fray. Play with your fabrics. I've got a piece so gorgeous I don't want to cover it up, so I've just done 1 thickness here, and here I'm going to do 2 thicknesses and allow the leaf to show top and bottom. You can play and do what you like, it's your quilt. Velvet has been the hardest to sew with because it's throwing the fabric on top of it off centre, but that doesn't really matter. It just adds interest to the quilt. Now you can do this sort of idea as any sort of memory quilt. You can use any sort of vintage fabrics. There are now vintage craft fairs or clothing sales where you can buy clothing by weight. You can add lace in. I'm just doing it with cottons and velvets. There are some design decisions. As you can see here, I've chosen to have a rosebud showing on the edge, and I've chosen to have a flower centre. And then the leaf is made from, well, it's actually bamboo leaves, but it looks leaf-like. You might choose to make the leaves out of fabric that imply that they are leaves. Mine are quite random, like tartans. If you have a directional print like a stripe, you can vary the direction. It just adds interest to the quilt. The larger roses are 6 layers of fabric, and it's much easier to sew them because I've practiced my techniques on the smaller flowers. As I'm sewing, you can see that I'm turning the fabric with my hand. I'm not after a perfect circle, but I'm aiming in that direction. This is not free motion embroidery. Changed my thread to this lime colour. Again, it's a Silco 50 weight, and I've got the same colour in the thread and the bobbin. I'm still using my walking foot, and my stitch length is still on 2. My intention is to stitch about 1/4 inch away from the edge of the leaf on both sides to secure it at the top, across the top, and then come down the centre. And don't forget that there's usually a natural curvature in a leaf. Starting in the middle, and I'm just pulling the petal out of the way while I secure that stitch. The stitching shows up nicely on that dark leaf. That light stitch shows up well on the tartan leaf, and on the citrine it blends in really well. Now, you should know me by now that I don't aim for perfection, I aim for impressionism, and this is why this is Shabby Chic. And if you get the impression that that's a flower or a rose, then that's exactly what I wanted. More than one way to do it. This way I sewed the leaves on first, and then pinned and sewed. Then I just moved the petals out of the way while I sewed going inwards. Here's the front and here's the back. Now, don't forget, we haven't quilted anything yet. So far all we've done is added fabric to fabric, but it's beautifully soft and pliable, and that's the beauty of selecting the cottons and the fabrics that you want. Right, I've got 63 of these to do, so I'm going to complete those, and then I'm going to ask you to like, subscribe so you don't miss the follow-up videos, and come back for part 2 when I'll be sewing this together and showing how I add the trellis effect. This is Maggie, the Cheshire Crafter. Thanks for watching. Bye.